Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be here today to announce the introduction of Bill 81, the Election Statutes Amendment Act 2021, number 2. It reflects a commitment our government made to Albertans, a commitment that we are taking action on, and something that I, as Justice Minister, believe is critical to the future of our province. We are getting rid of big money in Alberta politics and strengthening our democracy to ensure that Alberta's future rests solely with those who should determine it, Albertans. Not only will Bill 81 help restore Albertans' confidence in the electoral system, but it would also deliver on our promise to remove foreign influence in our elections. If passed, the Election Statutes Amendment Act 2021, number 2, would ban foreign money in provincial politics. It would allow only those who live in Alberta to contribute to election advertising during an election period, and only those living in Canada to donate to political advertising at all other times. These changes would prohibit other jurisdictions from unduly influencing Alberta elections and ensure that only those who have a real stake in the outcome are involved. Albertans know that foreign entities have no business interfering in our elections. This province belongs to its people, and elections must remain a time for Albertans to discuss and determine the fate of their province without undue foreign influence. Bill 81 would also impose an annual $30,000 limit for donations to third parties or political action committees, otherwise known as PACs, and prevent political parties, candidates, and constituency associations from contributing to third parties. This legislation would also establish a formula for determining the amount political parties can spend on election expenses. Currently, there is a flat limit of $2 million, which does not reflect the actual cost for campaign expenses with respect to leadership elections. In addition, costs have increased. The new limit would be $1.16 per registered voter. Additional changes proposed in Bill 81 include increasing the expense limit for nomination contestants from 20% to 25% of a candidate's limit, and making it so contributions to nomination contestants who are those seeking to be the official candidate in a riding are not part of a donor's maximum contribution limit. Furthermore, these contributions would not be tax deductible. We also promised to set a permanent election date, which would level the playing field for all political parties. Bill 81 would establish the last Monday in May as the day Albertans can go to the polls for a provincial election. In addition to providing certainty, a set election day would remove the advantage a governing party may have and increase Albertans' trust in their democratic process. Bill 81 would also set the start of the campaign period as the day the writ is issued, instead of the current February 1st. Bill 81 would also make voting easier for Albertans. It would allow for increasing the number of advanced voting places where needed to make it easier to vote early. Amendments in Bill 81 would also help voting stations run more smoothly by allowing election officers to perform a wider range of assigned duties instead of being restricted to specialized roles. Voting cards could also be sent electronically as well as by mail. An amendment would also require voters to produce identification to vote in provincial elections. This is already in place in municipal and federal elections and would help increase the integrity of Alberta elections. This act would also make minor amendments to electoral legislation to ensure words and phrases are consistent throughout the election legislation. For example, proposed changes include changing terms like polling day to election day. The bill will also add references to the Recall Act and Citizen Initiative Act to election-related legislation. Together, all of these proposed changes reflect this government's commitment to strengthening democracy in our province. The scope of this commitment is clear, as can be easily seen in the improvement being proposed, from getting big money out of provincial politics to setting the fixed election date and making voting easier for all Albertans. This government is steadfast in living up to the promises we made it to Albertans to enshrine their democratic right. Thank you so much. May God continue to bless the people of our province. I will now take some questions.
So we'll now take some questions from the media. A reminder to those on the phones that if you could identify your name and outlet prior to your question, and we'll go to the reporter in the room first. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's Shalane Skalski with CTV News. You talk about banning foreign influence in Alberta elections. Do you have an exact number and the foreign funds that have interfered with past elections? And can you speak to specifically why this is such an issue in the province?
I think we can all agree that allowing any loophole whatsoever to allow foreign money to pour into our elections should be prohibited. It should never have existed in the first place. As we saw with the Allen report, it makes clear that hundreds of millions, if not billions, of foreign money have entered into our country for all kinds of purposes, including campaigns and influencing elections. For us, in this province, our elections belong to Albertans, and that's exactly what this bill seeks to do.
Follow-up?
Yeah, as a follow-up, something a bit unrelated. The changes to election expenses, lifting, I guess, is it a hard cap? Because when looking at 2019 spending, the UCP declared $2 million through party expenses, but then in other areas there was spending to a total of about $5.5 million. So I'm wondering, is this a hard cap on party spending, or are there other opportunities to get creative with accounting?
Well, for general elections, right now in the province, it is $2 million. I think what we are doing is to set a formula for determining that amount, consistent with BC and other provinces as well. That amount will be $1.16 per voter in our province, and that is consistent with what is obtainable in other jurisdictions.
We'll now go to the phone lines. So first caller, please.
Thank you. Jenny Russell, CBC.
Hi, thank you, Minister. You said that this is about getting also big money out of politics, but if this bill is passed, it would actually increase potentially the amount that someone could donate politically in a year because it excludes donations to nomination candidates or contestants. So how, if at all, is that part of the bill consistent with your contention that this is leveling the playing field?
Yeah, you know, I recall that these similar accusations was made with respect to Bill 29 when I was Minister of Municipal Affairs. And I think we've seen a municipal election, and none of that turned out to be true. The fact is that there is still an expense limit with respect to nomination elections. Today, it is $10,000. What this bill does is to increase that from 20% to 25%, effectively $2,500 expense addition. At the end of the day, the total amount of expense any nomination candidate can spend will be $12,500, and that's all that matters.
Follow up?
Yeah, with respect, that's not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is the amount that someone could donate to a nomination contestant. And as we talked about with government officials earlier today, someone could theoretically donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to a nomination contestant if this bill is passed, and that money wouldn't count against the roughly $4,200 total that they're capped at per year for political donations. So So how is that consistent with getting big money out of politics?
And all that they can spend is $12,500. I think my point is that this was the same accusation that was made with respect to Bill 29. The fact of the matter is that in this province, I want to ensure that we level the ground for everyone, especially folks from cultural communities who may not have the connections and the network to raise all of the money that they need. Women, who struggle to find, several donors to raise all of the money required. This would level the ground to make sure that we have, new candidates interested in our provincial elections, strengthen their ability to be able to participate in provincial elections, seek nominations of political parties without the undue obstacles on their part. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there is still a hard cap of $12,500 that they can spend with respect to nomination contest.
Next question, please.
Lisa Johnson, Edmonton Journal.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my questions. I'm wondering specifically why this legislation includes a proviso that constituency associations no longer would be required to report their quarterly fundraising numbers. Why is that in there? How does that benefit anybody?
They will still be required to report annually. As you know, Lisa, many of the people that do this work at the constituency level are volunteers. And this will apply to all constituency associations, regardless of political party. We want to remove unnecessary red tape and ensure that there is efficiency, remove the obstacles to the concern with respect to late filing, multiple documents, online filing, and things like that. They will still be required to file annually. I would note that the official opposition, the NDP, do not have, because of the way they raise money, they do not have to do, this really doesn't affect them. They file one annual returns at the end of the year. So this would level the ground, but more than anything else, provide efficiency, remove red tape so that constituency associations can focus on the work of building their constituency associations.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'm curious to know who asked for a raise in the spending cap for political parties and this new formula. It doesn't seem to have come from the chief electoral officer, so I'm wondering who is asking that there be a new formula for election spending limits for political parties. And I'm sorry to double barrel this, but in terms of process, the embargo documents that we received this morning didn't contain anything about the move to close the AFL loophole by prohibiting groups formerly affiliated with political parties from running political action committees. So does that indicate that this government has lost confidence in some of its mandates?
Well, this bill will close that loophole that you actually referred to and put a cap on the amount of money that can be donated to third parties or PACs. With respect to the the limit on expenditure for general election, we continue to learn from previous elections. We continue to rely on the recommendations of the Chief Electoral Officer. In this particular instance, there were over 100 recommendations. You will recall also that we had the Special Democratic Accountability Committee that also worked on this particular file and made recommendations. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that our election financing laws are consistent with the realities on the ground and with what is obtainable in other jurisdictions. And I think I've noted that BC, for example, have a similar formula for determining their expense limit with respect to general election.
Next question, please.
Megan Hawkins, Calgary Herald.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for taking my question. And I apologize for switching gears a little bit here, but is it the case that you've you've decided that there's nothing more that should be done by the province or local authorities to address the concerns raised about Councillor Chu. Is that matter settled in your view?
Well, I think Minister McIver is the Minister of Municipal Affairs dealing with that particular issue as a province and as a government. And all of us, I think we can all agree that we take exception to accusations of sexual harassment or sexual impropriety. I, for one, believe that there is no place for such a thing in our province. But ultimately, I think we can all agree that we have a system that works. We have a system whereby certain things are done in accordance with law. And I am confident that our system would deal with this one as well.
Follow up?
Yeah, so it's your view, and I recognize that you're suggesting I need to speak with Minister McIver, and I will. But since oversight of policing is partly the purview of your department, I did want you to speak a little bit to that. Is it that you're saying that the matter was appropriately handled by the Calgary Police and the Police Commission at the time? No,
I can't speak to whether or not the matter was appropriately handled. What I can speak to is that the matter was dealt with in accordance with the system that they have. And if there are more things that are required to be done, I am confident that the system would address that.
We'll go to our last question now.
Councillor Grukowski, Alberta Today.
Hi, thanks, Minister. I wanted to come back to this nomination contest funding. So if contestants can only spend $12,500, but they're allowed to fundraise an unlimited amount, it doesn't count. What happens to that excess? Does it go to party coffers? Is the candidate allowed to hang on to it for future elections? What happens to that excess amount?
So I think at this point in time, candidates have, nomination contestants have options. Those extra money could go to the Constituency Association. It could be donated to the party. It could be donated to what? It could be, donated to charity. If you recall, there are laws that allows for how those excess cash can be dealt with. So again, I am confident that at the end of the day, we have maintained a hard cap on the amount of money that a nomination contestant can spend with respect to extra money that was raised during that particular process. The system, the electoral laws, identify how all of those can be dealt with, including, making donations to the party, to the CA, or to registered charities in our province.
Follow up?
Yeah, on the closing of the AFL loophole, so if the chief electoral officers decides that they want to deny registration to a third-party advertiser, what recourse or what can that potential PAC do to dispute it? And will that decision be in writing? What happens to that PAC if they disagree with the chief electoral officer's decision?
There is always the right to apply to the court for a judicial review of the actions or lack thereof of the chief electoral officer. And I am confident that the chief electoral officer, being an independent body with the legislative mandate to deal with all of those issues, will take all of the relevant factors into consideration. What we are seeking to do here is very simple. To say that if you are a third party, a PAC that have got a formal affiliation to a political party, then there should be restrictions on the type of activities that formal entity can have and its impact on our elections. And I think the chief electoral officer is well suited with the legislative mandate, in addition to this Bill 81, to deal with those issues.
I'm told there's just one more question, so we'll go to our last question on the line.
Michelle Belfontaine, CBC.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for taking my question. I wanted to dig in a little bit more on this whole issue of nomination contestants. So you say that a nomination contestant can only spend a maximum of $12,500 on their campaign to win a nomination. But what I don't understand is, so there's no limits on these donations, which presumably allows, say if I'm somebody who has a lot of money, I could decide to donate, I could donate a big amount of money to one candidate in, say, Fort McMurray-Lac-La-Biche, and then there's another person that I like who's running in Banff-Kananaskis. I'm going to donate to them as well. And none of that is counted towards my $4,200 limit. So I just want you to explain the reasons for why there is no cap on these donations.
So, Michelle, as I said before, if you recall, Michelle, this was also one of the criticism of Bill 81, one of the accusations, in fact, they were leveled against me. And I'm sure that you could search the internet and social media and find all of those accusations. We now have had a municipal election under Bill 29, and I hope we can all agree that I have not seen a single reporting from you or the media that would suggest that all of those criticisms were well-founded. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that our electoral laws are consistent with the realities on the ground and the expectations of Albertans. With respect to nomination contest, at the end of the day, we have, as committed and as promised, we've maintained a cap on the amount of money that a contestant in a nomination can spend. That amount is $12,500, and that remains under Bill 81. Your question have got to do with contributions by individuals, prior to the nomination election. Again, I want to level the ground. I have always used my own personal experiences as someone who was completely unknown in the political scene, before I was elected in 2019. And those experiences have informed my thought process on the type of change that is required to attract new Canadians, new Albertans, people like myself, women, minority communities to fully participate in our elections. And I think that is one of the rationale behind that provision.
Follow up?
Yeah, but Minister, what you're saying to me is just because it didn't happen the last time doesn't mean it won't happen again. And it could happen again. And so I don't understand why you can't just cap this and place limits on this. It's just a line in legislation. So again, I don't understand why you're not doing this. I still don't understand what the reason is for this. Why not do it? How could it hurt?
Yeah. So again, the part of the goal, my goal, is to level the ground, remove obstacles to new Canadians, new Albertans, to be able to participate in our electoral process, level the ground to ensure that women are not prohibited from participating in our elections because of the stringent nature of our electoral laws when it comes to election finances and contributions. Level the ground to make sure that other minority, cultural, indigenous people that want to participate in our elections don't have to deal with current obstacles in the system. I understand, that you would want the individual donation to be capped at, with respect to nomination, to be capped at about, I think today, about $4,000. That cap still exists with respect to once that particular nomination contestant becomes the official candidate of the party. The individual contributions remains with respect to the general election. That has not changed.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.